Welcome to the second of the 3 videos in the counselling videos on hyperacusis. We want you to watch all of them so that we're able to plan effectively with you at your next appointment. My name is Laura Turton and I'm the Adult Audiology Manager at South Warwickshire NHS Foundation Trust. And one of my specialist areas clinically is hyperacusis. This video focuses on understanding the ear, hyperacusis, and how our brains interpret sound. Welcome. Thanks for coming. Please make yourself comfortable. This presentation is designed to give you a wealth of information about the nature of hyperacusis and how to manage it. You may wish to make notes on things that you relate to as you see them on this course and record any questions that you may have, and we can address all of these in your next appointment. If your appointment is a long time ahead, you may even wish to watch these again to refresh yourself before we speak to you. So to start with, let's spend some time understanding how our ears work. Please pause this video and copy the link at the bottom and paste this into your internet browser. There is a short video we'd like you to watch before continuing, which will describe the hearing pathway. Welcome back. So how does this link with my hyperacusis? There are several theories about the mechanisms that underlie hyperacusis. What they all share in common is that hyperacusis is usually associated with increased sensitivity or auditory gain in the central auditory system, which is the hearing pathways in the brain. This sensitivity can be influenced by mood. So far, we've discussed how sound is collected by the ear. We're now going to think about how the brain makes sense of those sounds. The brain acts as a detective when it hears sounds for the first time. It's built up a catalogue of sounds throughout our lives, and when it hears a new sound, it tries to initially organise that sound into one of the categories it has developed. If we consider a sound to be important or as a threat, we work hard to monitor it. If it's no longer important, we disregard it. An example of this would be that we can often hear our name being spoken across a busy room. At this point, we consider our name to be important and our brain focuses in on it like that super detective. When, however, the sound is new, the brain has to investigate to determine whether this sound is a threat or not. It asks, is this sound offensive? Is it dangerous? And in order to do this, it internally amplifies the sound to study it better. The part of the brain that processes sound has a strong connection with the limbic system, which processes our emotions. Sounds are given an emotional label, which is later the feeling we get when we rehear that sound. Some sounds are very negative, for example, a baby crying or fingers scratching down a blackboard. Some are positive. For example, listening to music or maybe some natural sounds. But most sounds we hear are neutral. When somebody knocks at the door, it is neither pleasant or unpleasant to me. And when the sounds have a negative label on it, it makes us put more of an emphasis on it. And so we focus on it and can become more severely distressed. So think about some of the sounds you find uncomfortable. You might always have experienced sound sensitivities, or there may have been a particular emotional experience that you link with that sound. The negative association links the sound and the emotion together. So, for example, you may have heard a dog barking as a close friend died, and the feelings of loss and grief get linked to the dog bark. Your subconscious brain did this, and we need to try and look at how we can interpret this sound differently. This slide brings together what we've said so far. It looks a lot more complicated than it really is. This diagram illustrates how and why certain sounds can affect us the way that they do. The first thing to say is that most of this occurs by your subconscious brain, that you're not actively thinking about these things. Let's think about one of the sounds you may find uncomfortable. For this example, let's take the sound of cutlery clanging together. So the cutlery clangs, and you hear the cutlery. It's consciously heard, and it's detected. This engages your conscious thinking brain. And you might think, oh, I wish the waiter could be more careful with the cutlery. At this point, your subconscious brain links the sound to a negative emotion. It may be around anxiety. And it may lead you to think, I knew this was a bad idea coming out for dinner. I should have stayed at home where I can be more safe and more careful. Which can again lead to strengthening that negative emotional label. Now, in some cases, these connections can be so strong that it initiates the body's fight and flight response to deal with stress, which can bring about certain biological changes like sweating and an increased heart rate. Much of this becomes an automated response cycle, which means it will happen every time you hear the cutlery clanging or whatever sounds you're struggling with. And the longer that you have these thoughts, the stronger these connections become. There's also a link between sound and anticipating a sound will happen. So imagine that you're sat by the phone and you're waiting for a job offer, and they've said they'll call you at about 12 p.m. Your anticipation rises as the time comes close to midday. And when the phone eventually rings, even though you've been waiting for it, it causes a startle response. This happens for people with hyperacusis. You may know that when you're visiting your friend who has a new baby that they are likely to cry, but through anticipating this sound, you are likely to bring on a startle response. Thank you for listening. Please watch the third and final video in our course.